Hey guys, welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be going over the installation process of this MaxJax lift system that I have behind me. It's a 2-post car lift that you can install in your garage, and it's suitable for lower ceiling heights such as 8 foot that I currently have in mine. And it is a pretty fantastic piece of equipment that you can install pretty easily on DIY. You just need a couple tools, and well, let's get to it. Okay, so at first we'll start off with the shipping. The shipping is a pretty easy process. I had it delivered to a warehouse, which made it a little bit more complicated than it would if you got it delivered directly to your house. But I'm also cheap, so I didn't want to go the route of paying another $140, I believe it was, to have it delivered to my house directly and have to pay a liftgate fee and so on. So I loaded it in the back of my dad's 92 Toyota pickup. It'll fit in the bed of a small truck. Although a small truck probably doesn't like the size of this, or not the size of it, but the weight of this item. It weighs approximately about 1,000 pounds, so if you're considering going this route, just make sure your truck can hold on to it. I mean, this old beat up truck can do it, so I'm sure that any truck can do it. Other than that, if you're offloading it from the truck, I mean, there's going to be no way that you're going to carry it with even 4 guys. I mean, it's about 250 pounds per corner, so it'll weigh a ton for 4 guys to offload it. So what I did is I just opened up the container and took each piece out individually, and with 3 guys you can take out the 2 posts no problem. And this is pretty much how it looks on the inside. It's really easy to work with. Okay, so now I've continued actually installing most of the parts onto the MaxJax lifts that came with, like, all the parts that came with the kit. Some of them were a little bit of a pain. This little release, I couldn't really find out how to install it in the manual, but I'm guessing this is the proper way. That way at least it has some force back, and then that should at least provide the unlock. I'm not 100% sure, but I'm gonna see how that plays out. This fitting down here, I found that assembling everything besides the quick disconnect was probably the best way of doing it, and getting that to line up straight was kind of annoying. It wanted to, you know, turn a little bit. I don't know, I'm hoping I got it all the way tight. You had to apply thread sealant to each MPT point on that fitting. And as far as getting the cart assembled, the cart assembly is, I made the mistake at the beginning, not really looking at the instructions, but there's tighter points together right here, and that should be the top side of the cart. Let me zoom out a little bit. And that should be the top side of your cart, and then the bottom side's for the actual power unit. So if you're installing it, make sure that you leave the smaller gap up on the top and then the larger one on the bottom, and then you won't have to unassemble it and reassemble it like I did. The other thing is they have a note inside the manual, and I mean, pretty much I think any newer unit probably doesn't have this problem, but the in should be on the bottom, and it should be to the left hand side of the power unit, and then it should be joining to there. And in the instructions manual, it'll tell you what to do if that's not the case. So right now I'm currently measuring where I'm gonna have it in my garage. I put a car as an example and kind of put the center point as the lift points. I'm also kind of calculating for a larger vehicle. My garage is kind of a mess right now. I meant to move this rack, but I got cylinder heads and stuff on it. So, but finding the center point can be kind of tricky because I have these joints, and I don't really want to mount on top of the joint because of the fact that I'm also create a smaller barrier between where that goes to my joint, and that could weaken this concrete right there. So I kind of want to keep it as far as possible from there. And also this surface to surface is not the most level, so I don't want to have any issues with type of shimming, like having to do extra shimming. The other thing is once I'm all set up, I'm gonna go ahead and move that MaxJax over, chalk line it, and then measure it and measure for everything, and then I'll start doing the drilling with the 7/8 concrete drill bit and install these anchors that they provided in the kit. And I'm guessing the long bolt that they sent is the setting bolt, and all the rest are the actual bolts that come with it, and they have the washers. And okay, so now I've done most of the measuring and everything is pretty much good. So I'm deciding to go more rear bias on my garage. I'm thinking that maybe with the bigger vehicles, I'm going to have to move the rack that's in the back. It's right here. I'm gonna have to remove it because I'm with the E60, my center line's pretty much 95 inches. So that'll lead me up to pretty much the edge right here. And once again, I apologize for the mess, but it'll leave me kind of close to the wall, but the plus side is with the lift, I still have like a little bit of moment. It doesn't have to be exactly center line. And then the other plus side is it'll give me a lot more room up front to work with. And as you can see, my garage is about 23 point something feet deep, and it'll give me plenty of space to either drop a subframe, pull it forward, and so on. And also I won't have to really worry about hood clearance when it comes to the top up here, because when the hood swings up, as you can see, that one's in a better condition. I don't have to worry about any type of collision from the garage door itself, which will be a blessing. And well, I'm gonna get to moving this car out, and then I'll go ahead and start lining up the MaxJax and give myself about 3 inches according to the manual from the side, and then we'll see how they look after that. Okay, so I ended up going with a 130, approximately 3 inches. It's about 132 and like 7/8 or so. But that should call it good there. The reason I couldn't is because of the joint. I have a pretty steep drop off there, and I wanted to make sure I'm full flat on the pad. And seems like that's probably my better option as far as going that way. So I put about 3.5 right there, and another 3.5 approximately right there. So that should give me good spacing from the wall. Let's get to getting the hammer drill and use this big bit right over here and get those holes drilled in, and then we can get those lag bolts put in. Sweet. I have to now finish drilling all the other holes. I've drilled the whole, I completed one jack unit, and now I just got to do the other. But I found that if I go ahead and I tighten one down, which I'm going to be doing on the other one, actually, I'll just go ahead and show that. If I tighten one down first, so I drilled this hole, now I'm just going to go ahead and put this anchor in there with the set tool. And then I'm gonna go ahead and tighten it down so that it locks this in position, so I don't have to worry about it starting to walk while I'm moving it around, and it'll make it a little bit easier for me, just making sure that I have an accuracy on not offsetting the holes. I did kind of the same on the other one, but I didn't lock down as much, and I noticed that maybe one of the holes is slightly up, but it's still within range, which is great. But the drilling definitely takes quite a while, and you need to have a hammer drill, and I've been using engine coolant that I had in a bucket to cool off the tip every single time I would lower about an inch or so. And another thing is I had the shop back there just ready to suck up any of the cement that I have undug, so I can clear it and then go ahead and continue drilling more. That's mainly just drilling basics, but it's definitely quite a bit of a job, and if you don't have a hammer drill, it will suck. I also ended up getting a 15/16 crow's foot today because I didn't feel like I was actually bringing it up to torque. And you could also use a 24mm crow's foot if you only had metric, but 15/16 is what I bought because the bolts are standard, and you have to tighten them down to 90 foot-pounds, which is quite a bit. So just if you do decide to get one, it is quite a bit of work as far as labor-wise when it comes to drilling and getting everything set up. Other than that, it's pretty straightforward install, and I'm gonna continue on. Okay, so now we have all of the arms on every single post, well, out of the 2 posts, and now we're gonna go ahead and start filling up the unit. I bought the AW-32 hydraulic oil that states in the manual to use. It also says that you can use Dextron, but I just chose to go with hydraulic oil since it's still available at the stores. If ATF was the only one, I would have definitely have just gone with ATF. But since it's readily available, I might as well go with that. And I'm gonna make sure to fill it first and then go ahead and start the pump and see how it goes from there. Okay, so now that the reservoir is completely full, we can go ahead and start the bleeding process of these two MaxJax cylinders. So we're gonna go ahead and connect the pump. I'm gonna loosen the bleeder screws on the top as it states in the manual. And then we're gonna we have to make sure there's no weight on them, of course, besides the arms themselves. And then we're gonna raise it all the way up to the top and then hold for 3 seconds. And then after that, we will tighten them down, then lower the lift. So should be a pretty easy process, and we can finally have liftoff on these things. Okay, so I've gotten it lifted up a little bit and lowered it a little bit just because I felt like it took a really long time, so I'm guessing the system is completely bone dry from factory. So what I'm going to do is I lowered it all the way. Probably should have tightened the bleeder screws when I did that, but I lowered it all the way down to the ground. And then now I'm just gonna top off the reservoir because I noticed it's really low. I might have to go to the store to go get some more fluid. I have used approximately 2 gallons. We'll see if it gets actually up to the level again, but after that I will go ahead and lift again and see if we can go ahead and get the system to adequate level, but I just might need one for anyways for having it to service and so on. Okay, so now second time the charm, let's go ahead and lift this up again and see if it works. Okay, so now the system's been fully bled. I've raised it all the way up to the top on both sides. I've checked for leaks and everything appears to be good. So, and I made sure to clean it up while I was in the middle of doing that because of course there was residue from bleeding when it came out the top screws. I had to wipe any of the fluid that came downward after it hit max pressure when it hit the very top. After that, there was one point in the instructions where it says to measure the distance from the top of the post between the tops and then the bottom of the post between the two bottoms, and then you should be at the equal distance. And I had a little bit of a hiccup with that where I went and grabbed an angle gauge because I wasn't too sure if my measurements were kind of throwing me off, but when I measured the angle, they're really close in tolerance, so I'm not too concerned. The deviation was probably about less than 1/4 inch, and I already shimmed one side, so I didn't really want to go ahead and start shimming like crazy and end up with maybe just not the right setup. So that's all set up. As far as how I have the power unit set up, that rack is going to be leaving, so I'll have more room at the back, and it should be good to go from here. And let's go ahead and get this a car set up on the lift and get to enjoy having a lot more space underneath. Okay, so now this M3 is fully set up on the lift. It's of course really easy. This car is, I think, relatively at stock height, and the pad clearance is okay. Let me see if I can get a video. It's pretty tight, but it's not too tight. So other than that, this thing is great. So now let's get ready for the moment of truth and pick this thing up in the air and see how this lift handles this car, and it should do great. So let's see. And there we go. Easy day. And also my ceilings are about 8 foot. With the hood up, I know that my clearance is gonna be limited. Luckily I have these trusses. I might try to re-engineer these as far as how they go across, and maybe I might be able to add some clearance above the vehicle. But let's wait for the first lock. So that's the first lock setup, which is relatively high. It's not the lowest, it's higher than what I set up these. I have the smaller jack stands up front all the way up to their max, and this one is nowhere even near this one, so probably looking at like another 4 inches of lift. And if you go up even more, you can see the clearance on the roof, and it's pretty awesome. I'm pretty excited about this. But one thing to note is with the hood open, of course, I'm going to have an issue with clearance. If you have an 8 foot ceiling like me, you're gonna be limited as far as height, especially with hood open. Other than that, working underneath this thing is going to be great. There's so much ground clearance that now I could just roll in there with the creeper that I bought with it, and that creeper is awesome because you have a reclining back. And okay, well that pretty much sums up the whole installation process as far as installing it. I mean, my initial thoughts on this thing is that it will make my life so much easier when it comes to picking up any type of vehicle. I won't have to go around trying to find the center points and hoping that the center pad is there or anything along those lines. Now I only have to worry about the main lifting points, especially on BMWs. I just have to worry about the lifting pads themselves, but that's a lot easier than having to worry about the center points where the pad might be missing, or the lifting point like on an E60 where it's really complicated to get to. And as far as any issues I had with the installation process, I only had one real issue, was that there was a leaking O-ring on the power unit. I just ended up replacing it with the universal O-ring that I got from a metric set. It was the one that went right on the bottom right here. It's a JIC fitting. There was an O-ring right behind it, and that O-ring started leaking on me. Originally I thought that I didn't tighten it correctly, but it turns out I didn't actually have the problem, and that the O-ring itself was bad. So as soon as I put a new O-ring in it, that solved that problem. And everything else, it's been great. So I'll try to do a follow-up later, maybe in a year, to see how long it's lasted. One thing to note, if you're looking at getting one, they have, the older models will be the Danmar edition, and they have an actual locking pin. This has automatic locks where you just flip this guy up, and then after that you can just, it'll automatically drop, and they automatically engage when going back up. So it's pretty awesome. I kind of like that feature as far as the newer one goes. Makes my process as far as lowering it down a little bit better, and also knowing that they're automatically engaged and I might not forget it is a solid thing as well. Think if there's anything else. So, oh, the other issue I had when installing it was in the manual. Maybe I'm not that great at reading through manuals, which I think sometimes I'm not. You go ahead and this is how you would install it. You would slide the pin in, make sure that this spring is on top, slide that over that rod, and then continue sliding it in, and then get the other spring over the other side, and that's how you install it. I didn't see it mentioned in the manual. They showed like brief pictures, but it didn't really show like the whole assembly picture. So hopefully that helps a little bit. And it seems like the fittings themselves are a bit better than the one of the previous edition. I remember hearing that the previous edition had leaky fittings, and I guess they solved that with the Bendpak edition. But other than that, it was a pretty easy install. I actually recommend this product if you work on cars quite a bit, or if you have a ceiling that's able to fit this. If you have a short ceiling, I would not recommend this product. But as far as everything goes, also make sure that your floor is able to handle this lift. I know in the manual it says that you should have at least 4.5 inches of concrete. I'm lucky I have about 5.5 inches. I'm guessing they poured it on a 2x6 frame, and that my floor is super sturdy. So just make sure that you have that set up before you buy this. Otherwise you might be not in the best of places after spending the amount of money that this thing costs. But well, thank you for watching, and if you have any questions, feel free to leave it to me in the comments. And sorry this video is a little bit messy. This is my first one, so hopefully I can improve from here. Thank you.